You didn't know? Your ass better call somebody!
The energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, reppin' both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire, misunderstood. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline greens, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. Rob hype on the mic, CP's the fire spark. Together they ignite, voices like the park fans dripped in jerseys. Legacy bold, the Metropolitan story forever told. Turnstile spinning, the crowd floods the gates. This is family, no time for debates. Crack of the Batman, the roar never fades. Queens in the blood, it's how champions are made. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline gleams, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. 7-line swagger, vibes electric and wild. Mets legacy golden since I was a child. Orange crushed skies, let the battle ignite. Ride for the home team till the last fight.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the Amazing Mets pregame show right here on the channel and on X. And this is a breaking point for the New York Mets. It's just that simple. Just that simple. No ifs or buts or who's to blame, because at this point, this is a team losing effort. And there's got to be a time, like there's not much time left. There is not much time left for the New York Mets to maintain their lead in the wild card division. Over. We all know that, right? We all know that. Sorry about that. Let's get a text really quick. I'm sorry about that. 17 games to go. This breaking point for the New York Mets has to become reality to them, because I know who it's reality for. It's reality for the New York Mets fans, right? It's reality for Mets fans. We see it. We understand it. We know the flaws. We know the issues. But it seems like the Mets know the issues, but are still hesitant to make certain news. And we go back to last night's post-game show in regard to the question about Sean Manaea to Carlos Mendoza. And the question was basically, is Sean Manaea starting his, is going to be on the mound for his next start? And Mendoza said yes. Now, can this be an instant post-game reaction where it's like right after the game, he's fired up, Mendoza? So was that just out of his mind that that was his first thought? And maybe they're talking about it today and hopefully the next couple of days. But we've talked about this. Myself, Chris, Zach, others have talked about it for a couple of weeks now. Sean Manaea needed to be in this Mets bullpen for a couple of weeks now. You brought up all the kids, which it shouldn't have been this late to bring up all the kids in the first place. Each one of these guys should have been here near the same time. Kodai Senga did not deserve more starts than he actually got. Sean Manaea, same thing. We're going on 10, 11 starts since they come back from injury. And they've basically single-handedly, these two guys hurt this team the most. And I told you this a couple of days ago, the last time I did a show. I said to you guys, do you really believe the New York Mets would not start Sean Manaea in a postseason game if the Mets even make the postseason, as they're hanging on for dear life for a postseason spot? I said it. You really believe they're not going to put the guy who they said was our ace, paying him $20+ million over the course of 3 years? You really think he is not going to make? Now, I'm not saying game one, but you really believe in any of the three games in the wild card? Let's say it does go to 3 games. He's not going to start for the New York Mets. You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. And I'm sorry to say this. I'm sorry to say this, but this is the time on the show, very early in the show, where I said, I told you so about David Stearns. I told you so. Now, can the Mets turn this around, have a really good 17-game stretch, make the playoffs with no problem, and make a run in the postseason? Absolutely. Absolutely. How do they do it? I don't know. But, I mean, crazier things have happened. But David Stearns is the type of guy to allow Manaea to continue to fail on the mound. And the bullshit explanation they're going to give is after the 4 runs he gave up in the first 2 innings, he pitched quote-unquote better because he did put zeros up for the remaining 3 innings. And we can have this conversation where the offense hasn't been good over the last 3 games. Wasn't good in the finale of the Red series. The first game of the Reds, obviously, they lost 1-0. And they only scored 3 runs in this game. Obviously, they needed 10 to win. But, again, it's a problem. And it's an overall problem. And we continue to look at why this is what it has become for the New York Mets. Now, we've played how many months of the season already, right? We're in month 6. Well, 5, really, right? You could call March part of April. So it's April, May, June, July, August, September. We're in month 6. 2 months. And I'm gonna scarcely say 2 months because there's more than a month and a half. Because if you go back to the middle of May, the problems with this rotation started around that time. And I wish I was wrong, guys. I really, really wish I was wrong. And I would eat my words on September 10th about this pitching staff and this rotation in particular. For nearly 4 months, this pitching has been disgusting. It has been terrible. I don't want to hear about injuries. I don't want to hear about any type of injury excuse. All right? Because for that month and a half that the Mets pitching was the best in baseball, Sean Manaea was not there. Sean Manaea was not there. You could talk about the Kodai Senga injury. Oh, wait, did I say injury? How did we not know Kodai Senga was not going to get injured, guys? How did we know that? I mean, you have to be on another planet thinking that Kodai Senga would have a healthy season. He was given a contract to the Mets from Japan, and the biggest concern was his injury issues in Japan when he pitched once a week and pitched every 7th day in Japan. And we know this. And I said it from the beginning. I don't care if you have a 4th or 5th starter that has question marks and you want to, give a chance on a guy that might not been good in a few years, or change a Clay Holmes into a starter, which for the most part has been successful, but not when you needed Clay Holmes to be one of your top guys because the other guys have failed. That's fine. But you can't rely on 3.5 months of Sean Manaea changing his mechanics and having a great season from that point, from the probably middle of June on, where he hasn't been good in about 5-6 years, and consider him your ace and act like it and being very confident. And you know what? Maybe I was one of the few that was not confident in Sean Manaea being that guy. And I said, I didn't mind Sean Manaea coming back, but it needed to be with somebody better next to him, a part of this rotation. Not often injured Kodai Senga and very inconsistent Kodai Senga. With a guy in Sean Manaea who all of a sudden is going to be a great pitcher at the age of 34 years old? I mean, come on, guys. Like we're smarter than this. Most of us are smarter than this. Like, the writing was on the wall. I told you go back to the hot stoves prior to Sean Manaea signing, and even when Sean Manaea signed, you can find any episode you want. We talked about Sean Manaea a lot. We talked about starting pitching. We all had a big conversation in regards to who we wanted free agent-wise in the offseason, right? I said Corbin Burns, and Chris said Max Fried, right? Again, Corbin Burns wasn't hurt. So you can't say, oh, well, Shomania wasn't hurt, right? Shomania wasn't hurt in the offseason either when the Mets signed him. Yet everybody threw a parade for Shomania. So that is the issue. And again, would Corbin Burns would have been a disaster this year? Absolutely. But I'm fairly confident when Corbin Burns comes back, he's going to be an ace-like guy or even a top 2 pitcher. I have no confidence in Shohei Manaea. Now, I truly believe that Shohei Manaea and this loose body in his elbow is probably a big reason why he's not pitching well. But when you go on the mound every 5th or 6th day, I don't want to hear about an injury. I'm sorry. If you're hurt, don't pitch. All you're doing is hurting this team. There's somebody that can pitch that might not be, don't have the career that you had, but somebody that can actually, put up a decent performance every 5th or 6th day. And we can kind of have a conversation on who that could be, but a fact's a fact. Shohei Manaea has been terrible. This is the guy who's making the most money in this rotation, right? If this was a guy, a top pitcher that everybody talks about that's making $25, $30 million, right? The same way they talk about Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor at the time of Lindor being the highest paid player on this team and people killing him. Why is nobody going out and killing Shohei Manaea? Like, why? Because he's smiling and he's a nice guy? I'm sick of this whole, leave him alone mentality. Like, baseball and winning shouldn't be the thing. I don't care who you are as a person outside of the ball field. I'm sorry. That might be blunt. That might be, rude, but it's a fact. Does anybody give a damn and this is the problem with Met fans, and I truly believe this. I think Met fans care about the person outside of baseball and how he speaks to the media and to the fans rather than what they do on the baseball field. Like, give me a bunch of assholes and disrespectful guys. As long as they win, I can care less. But, everybody wants a nice guy and a guy who speaks to the fans and who's a guy who smiles and is a respected guy, blah, blah, all that nonsense, right? I don't care about that, right? The beloved team that we love in 1986. And again, I wasn't born, but I grew to love that team just by watching all the highlights, watching the entire videos, the DVD set of the 86 World Series, all that stuff. People who didn't even see that or live that grown to love that team. Why? Because they weren't the nicest guys. They weren't the most respected guys. And we all know what they did in their lives outside of baseball that would probably get people riled up in the media and the fan base. Yet, nobody cared because what they did on the field. That's a fact. And again, I'm not saying you can't be, the team can't be, a lot of the guys can't be a nice guy and, a respected guy and family-oriented guy or whatever. And the Mets still can't win. They can, of course. But we got too much of that issue on the side. The fact that not enough Met fans, and we all know, as a big Met fan in myself, I'm very critical. And you know what? I'm critical of myself. So this is not throwing anybody under the bus at all, because I'd be the first one to be critical of myself and tell you I was dead wrong. And everybody knows that who's on this channel. I will not. I would rather be so wrong right now than proven right in this aspect, with the fact that this rotation was always going to be a problem. And what the word I got, and you know what? Chris would be the first one to tell you. And you know what? When me and Chris get back on the show again, our schedules have been crazy. I haven't even been on the show for 2 days. So it's just been insane. Like, schedule-wise, it's just been hard for us. It's a crazy time of the month of the year for us. So it's hard to actually get together on shows. But when we do again, even Chris felt like this rotation would be good enough. Not great, and he never said that, but he thought they would be good enough. But he also said that, and he would tell you himself, that at the deadline, they would get what they need at the deadline. They didn't. Now, we can complain about Helsley. Nobody hated that trade, right? Everybody thought it was a good trade. Tyler Rogers was kind of like, I like the pitcher, but I didn't like what we gave up for him, which is true. I mean, Jose Buto would look nice in this bullpen right now, possibly even this rotation. And you did get rid of one of your top prospects in Drew Gilbert, who is having a solid, performing well with the Giants. But besides the point, right? We can't help what they're doing over there. But Tyler Rogers, he's been pretty good. Like, he hasn't been great, but he's been pretty good. And maybe he might be a difference maker in down the stretch and in the postseason. Who knows? But we all know the fact that this pitching staff, this rotation, with a ton of question marks. You're going with Sean Manaea, which, again, nobody cared about the mechanics except when they talked about his greatness over a 3-month span last year and talked about his mechanics. But nobody brought up about the possibility of injuries. Like, this guy, his whole entire career pitched one way. Now, did he mess around with his mechanics a tad? Yeah. But what he did last year was drastic mid-season. It was drastic. It was a complete different arm angle, a complete area of the rubber that he doesn't stand on. It was a lot of different moving parts, a whole different way he's ever thrown before. Now, maybe it would have been better if he did it in the offseason. But again, he figured out something that Sale was doing, and he tried to mimic it, and he was very successful doing so. But what is the difference this year? His fastball is a little bit slower. Now, it could be because of his elbow, but again, you pitch, you're on the mound. I don't want to hear about injury. Like, I'm very confident that he's going to have elbow surgery. I'm not saying Tommy John, but he's going to have to get those loose bodies removed, clearly. And if you get these loose bodies removed, he wouldn't be able to pitch the rest of the year if he did it. And I give him credit for going out there and trying it, but this isn't 2 or 3 starts. This is about 10 or 11. He might have had one good start. And that's a stretch. So I just don't understand. I just don't understand why people weren't shocked about what's going on and what was the real issue. And it's frustrating because this was obvious. Like, I truly think there's a divide between Mendoza and Stearns when it comes to philosophy and what they're thinking when it comes to pitching, because what Mendoza's saying and what Stearns is doing is completely opposite. Like, I don't understand how you can give a manager this rotation. And we can talk about bullpen all we want, but again, it's very hard to have, I don't necessarily agree on the process of, just getting a lot of, 1-year deals in this bullpen and hoping for the best. But I understand the logic because bullpens are volatile. We understand that. But at the same time, well, Steven, how much do you want Juan Soto to show up? He's on the pace for 40 home runs, over 40. He's on pace for over 100 RBIs. He had his average not even 2 months ago at 225, and it's nearly up to 270. Like, I'm sorry, but Juan Soto has been much better than expected. I mean, let's be honest. He has been. He has been. I mean, he really has. I mean, this guy's going to get MVP votes. I don't think he's going to win it, but he's going to be close. Right? I mean, again, he's been the best Mets hitter with runners in scoring position over the last, I would say, month and a half. And again, here's the problem with people that don't understand Juan Soto. People don't like Juan Soto for whatever reason. And it was before the money. people didn't like him, right? Everybody thinks, he's full of himself, which is fine. But you know what? Every team he's gone to, he performed. And he elevated them. Like the Mets, the Yankees have not made the World Series since 2009. And with him for 1 year, was able to get there. With Mr. Aaron Judge, MVP guy, couldn't do that for the Yankees alone. So, but Dolo, he's not a compiler. How can he say he's a compiler when he's a guy that's put up consistent numbers every year, and he's one of the most clutch players in baseball? He's not a compiler. Because here's a compiler. A compiler, is the numbers you talk about. I'm talking probably home runs, which, by the way, you can't call him a compiler when he's never hit 40 home runs prior to last year. He's been a 30 to 35 home run guy. Like, this is not a compiler. Dolo, I agree with you there. But I told you this. We know he was going to steal bases. Every time he gets on base, he's going to try to steal a base. Like, I didn't like what he did, right? I didn't like what he did. And Dio's right. If you're going to call Juan Soto a compiler, then Pete Alonso is the exact same thing, because I called him out for many times. Because at least Juan Soto, not this year. I'll give you this year. But Juan Soto would have 5 months of great baseball. He'll have one bad month, which most baseball players do. But Pete Alonso is doing exactly what he's doing his entire career. He'll have a great April and May, be okay or bad the next couple of months, and September he'll pick it up. Or he'll find a month in between where he's really good and then struggle mightily. That's why Pete Alonso never gets MVP votes. It's a fact. It is. But here's the problem. Juan Soto shouldn't have more home runs than Pete Alonso. So I'm telling you right now, if Pete Alonso were on the pace, now we still might hit 40 home runs, but if he is where Juan Soto is right now, one away from 40, and I brought up Pete Alonso being a compiler, people would kill me. Because last year, when he hit 31 home runs, 88 RBIs, batting 260-something, 259, 260, people killed me last year. Wow, you would kill to have a player with those numbers. Oh, really? The same people who were killing Juan Soto was coming at me about Pete Alonso. So it's impossible to understand why people hate Juan Soto so much when he's been one of the most clutch players since he's come up with the Nationals. We all forget how young he was when the Nationals won the World Series. He was a big part of that. Huge part. Even the San Diego Padres, right? He struggled out of the gate with them when he got traded there. But the following year, he was excellent. Then gets traded to the Yankees, had his best year of his career, and was the big influence and the big reason why the Yankees got to the World Series since 2009. For a guy in his first year with a team making the big bucks. And we all forget this too, that this is Juan Soto's first big contract. Might be his only big contract. But he's played under that rookie, that 6-year, rookie contract, basically, with arbitration. Now, I'm not saying, he has a cup on the corner asking for change, but let's be honest. He's been damn good for, Lindor wished he had a first year making that big contract like Juan Soto has. Lindor was nowhere near those numbers. This guy's going to hit 40-plus home runs, have 100-plus RBIs, probably about 265, 270. By the way, his average is nearly, all right, it's about 10 points lower, but close enough where nobody thought he was going to get nowhere near his career average this year. And he nearly is close to that. Not as close as he should be, but batting 265, 270 when you were batting basically the end of June in the 220s, it's a big difference. So to understand that for a guy in his first year with his first ever big contract and another new team is going to have 100 RBIs, 40 home runs, and bat 260, 270. And yet we're complaining. You see, this is the problem with Met fans. You are never happy. And if Pete Alonso was throwing up those numbers, which he's done, you can't criticize him because he's a homegrown guy. This is the problem. There's a reason why Pete Alonso didn't get a contract or a big, a long-term deal from anybody around baseball. And it took him basically begging, him and Steve Cohen sitting in a room to figure things out. And this is with the best agent in the world, in Scott Boras, trying to get a deal for him. There was so many teams that needed the first baseman last year in the offseason. We talked about it for weeks, months. How many first baseman teams needed the first baseman? Oh, Mike C, it is. And you know what? You might not like it, but it's a fact. It's a fact. I got destroyed last year for killing Pete Alonso, for calling him a compiler, which he is, right? When you suck for 3 months out of a baseball season and you see the other 3 months of where he's really hot for 2 and the other month okay, that's a compiler. Because he finds a way to go on this crazy streak for almost 2 months, put up massive numbers, and then if you break down the months, and I talk about this all the time, like when you break down the months, you see the drastic difference in months. That's a compiler. Go through Juan Soto's career. He'll have month after month after month of really good to great months. He'll have probably one like most people do. But there's a reason why he gets MVP votes. There's a reason why he gets that huge contract. And let's not act like the Mets were the only one offering him over $700 million. It was the Blue Jays. It was the Yankees. Teams that we would, if the Yankees would have got him, everybody would be like, oh, look at the Yankees again. And every Yankee fan would have been extremely happy. So, well, Angel, well, that's the thing. He technically a bigger deal, but yeah, sure. But yeah, Angel, that's the issue. Like, just don't look at it from a Mets perspective. And I think a lot of Met fans, and this is not Yankee fans disguising themselves. There's way too many of them Met fans that come on the channel, my channel, Chris' channel, anybody's channel that talks about this. Look at it from the baseball perspective, outside of the Mets universe. People don't believe Pete Alonso's as good as Met fans portray him. And the numbers are there. But again, Chris did a great job last year in breaking down numbers of his season last year. And it was eye-opening. And you know what? Chris did a great job in making people believe, like, what the hell is wrong with Pete Alonso? But that was most of his career. Now, 2019, different story when he came up. That was his best season, in my opinion. Because just of the pure dominance of how he performed. It wasn't just about home runs. Too many people are focused on the home runs, clearly, because only thing people care about is the home run Mets record, which is silly and embarrassing to talk about a home run record that's not even 300. All right, so it's just a fact that there's a reason why around baseball people weren't willing to give Pete Alonso a contract. He wasn't 33 years old. He was barely 30. Like, that should be eye-opening to everybody. Now, could he get a big deal this year? Yeah, you know why? Because here's the problem. The New York Mets are, with David Stearns, who the hell knows, right? We all know David Stearns did not sign Pete Alonso. We all know David Stearns did not sign Juan Soto. This was all Cohen. So I don't give Stearns no credit for it. Now, was he, after the deal was, they agreed upon, did David Stearns sit down and work out a breakdown of a contract? Probably, because he's smart in that way. But let's not act like other teams are pushing each other just to get in line for Pete Alonso. Now, the difference this year, after this offseason, when he does opt out, there might be less teams because, again, there was about four first basemen on the market. Pete Alonso was the big one. Yet everybody went all around him. They basically circled him multiple times to go to other people, other first basemen that is not as good as him, for other routes of a first baseman. And now there's probably less teams because obviously Vladimir Guerrero's not on the table this year, which we were all going to talk about if that was the case. But there's teams like the Giants, the Cubs. There was some speculation in, I believe it was, who was it? What team was it? There was a report that the Mets just played them. Let me just look at my schedule really quick. Just give me a second. I just want to see something really quick because it was interesting to think that. Yes, there was a report from Cincinnati that fans were clamoring that they should go after Pete Alonso if he opts out. So, there's probably about 2 or 3 teams, including the Mets, that probably desperately need a power bat and first baseman. So it worked out in that situation where it's probably going to benefit Pete Alonso. But make no mistake about it, I would put a higher percentage of Pete Alonso not being a Met after this year than a higher percentage of him being a Met next year. And there's a few reasons for that. One, he's another year older, and we know about David Stearns with guys over 30. He doesn't like that. And clearly he didn't like Pete Alonso to give him a long-term deal. You got Ryan Clifford, who is raking in AAA, and he plays first base. David Stearns just went to Japan to see that, I forgot his name, but that Japanese first baseman power hitter that everybody's talking about. There's a reason for that. Now, could that be a negotiating tactic? Sure. But we all know how David Stearns works. We know Ryan Clifford and that Japanese first baseman is all going to be much cheaper than Pete Alonso. And ultimately, I said this for a while. If you're going to continue to talk about how the Mets continue have these issues down the stretch, and they were 20 plus games over 500 a couple of months ago, and now they're, basically 7 games over 500 and hanging on for dear life for a playoff spot. 2022, they went down the stretch and they choked the division away, embarrassed themselves in a wild card against the San Diego Padres. Who is the ultimate guys who have been here the longest as a core that you should be blaming, right? Let's just go from 2019 when you had, or at least 2021, when you had Lindor, when you have Nimmo, McNeil, Alonso. All those guys have been here through different managers, different GMs, and different ownerships from 2019, right? Who are the stable guys that have been here through all this? Who've been here through losing seasons, choke jobs in 2022. This year, hanging on for dear life when you should be one of the best teams in baseball, right? It's those guys. It's the Pete Alonsos, the Nimmos, the McNeils, guys like that. And I'm going to put Lindor in there now because he's been here 4 years. That's the problem. That is the issue. And at some point, it might not be the sexy decision from Met, according to Met fans. But yeah, you can't break up the core with Nimmo, big contract, and Lindor's big contract. Now, Lindor last year was MVP caliber, right? He didn't just have 3 months. He had nearly 4.5 months of dominance. That's why he basically was talked about in the MVP conversation. But he's part of it, but he's been probably the least of the Mets' problems. Brandon Nimmo, big contract. Jeff McNeil got an extension. Pete Alonso remained on this team. Yet, for their career, the Mets have been either losing seasons or choke seasons, and we're on the verge of possibly choking away a playoff spot. Now, it's not over yet. They still haven't lost a playoff spot. After all this craziness, they still maintain a playoff spot. Because at one point, they were a half a game from the third wild card, or ahead in the third wild card. And now they're 2, obviously 3, because they have the tiebreaker over the Giants. But let's just keep it the number it's supposed to be. It's 3 right now. This is the main issue. At some point, you got to break the core up. This is going, look, Nimmo's been here since 2018? Same thing with Jeff McNeil, 2018, 2019. At some point, you got to say this core is not working. It's just not. And it might be less, Met fans might be pissed off at it, but sometimes you just have to break it up. And if it means Jeff McNeil and Pete Alonso are not on this team next year, it's not saying that these guys are not good players. Pete Alonso is one of the better power bats in baseball, and he's a really good player. Jeff McNeil has been a solid player for his career. But let's be honest, sometimes you have to make the hard decision. And I talked about the uncomfortable decision during trade deadlines that the Mets seem to never want to do and get uncomfortable at trade deadlines. And ultimately, I think it always cost them, and it's looking like they're costing them right now. The fact that this could be a possibility might not be the worst thing. Might not be the worst thing. Yeah, Dolo, I understand about Gilbert, but God, let's get over it. Like, we all know it's not the offense that are losing all these games. It's been the pitching for 3.5 months. Nearly 4. Like, let's be honest, Drew Gilbert can't pitch. The last 3 games, right? You can kill the offense. But again, like, look at how many runs we gave up yesterday. Like, that Nolan McClain game, look, that 1-0 sucks. But at some point, to get back to the conversation, they cannot continue this core and tell me that, it's going to be okay. When I've seen it firsthand, we continue to lose with the same core guys over and over again. It's the same routine every year. Why are we talking about this every year? Go back to last year in May. We talked about the core guys. Go back 2023. We talked about the core guys. For years, since 2022, we talked about this. About the core guys. You have to make the tough decision, and you have to split away when it doesn't work after all these years. You can't keep on keeping the same core together and think it's going to get better. These guys aren't getting younger. At some point, you have to pivot to a certain point. Maybe you do. Maybe the dynamic of making Lindor the actual guy on this team and being the main guy on this team with Juan Soto is the better play than having Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo being the longevity guys on this team. Like, it's possible. It's possible. And this is not to kill Pete Alonso or Jeff McNeil. And this goes back a couple of years ago with Brandon Nimmo. I would have never gave Brandon Nimmo that deal. I would have never done it. I was very against that deal. Go back a couple of years ago when they signed him. I did not want him. I did not want him for that amount of money he was going to get. I didn't want him because the injury concerns. He's another one that gets red hot for a month and a half and is a no-show for 3.5 months. He's another one. And everybody says, well, look at his numbers. Yeah, okay, you want to talk about another compiler? Brandon Nimmo. Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso go hand in hand. There is not a time where any of those players have more than 2 red-hot months, and the rest of the months, they're basically non-existent. And they might get a little bit better in a month, but they're usually non-existent. They're basically ghosts in this lineup. This has been a fact. Lindor doing what he did for 4 months last year, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo never did in 4 months. That's a problem. Juan Soto, Lindor gets those big contracts and major contracts, highest in their positions or in baseball, because they have MVP caliber seasons. They have more than 2 months of great success. That's why. Brandon Nimmo was basically, and I think the Mets did a terrible job where, it was looking like the Rockies were going to spend a ton of money on Brandon Nimmo, and then all of a sudden the Mets swooped in with the extra year, and Brandon Nimmo's a New York Met. And now, what is this, year 3 of the deal? And we still got 4 years left of Brandon Nimmo? Brandon Nimmo is often hurt. He's god-awful in left field. Then the Mets, right after they signed him, basically, he became, he's not a center fielder. You paid him to be a center fielder, and within a year, he's a left fielder. He has no arm. I still think he's not very good with the glove. Left field helps him, but we all know the situation of what the Mets did for him to make him become a better center fielder. He was terrible going back on balls and was very good coming in on balls. But ultimately, what they did was say, hey, Brandon, play deeper in center field so you can get to the balls that are over your head in the gaps in right and left center and straight center. And you're good in coming in on balls, but we all know there's no chance of him getting a blue pit in center field, where center fielders who play normal depth most of the time will get to those balls. So with all that transition, basically got him the contract he got. And he's now a left fielder who is a bad left fielder, and he has a noodle arm. And we seen it yesterday where I think he could have thrown out a guy, but there was no freaking chance because he has a terrible arm. So there's a lot of things here that frustrate me. But the fact that the Mets still have a 2-game lead and still haven't relinquished a playoff spot after all this time, they've been one of the worst teams in baseball over the last half a season, 78 games. They were, 14 games under 500 and 76 games the last of what I looked at. One of the worst teams. They're one of 5 teams that are terrible teams. The Mets are one of them. But they still find a way to maintain a playoff spot. I don't know how. But there's 17 games to go. And listen, I'm not ultra confident in Clay Holmes at all. You know my thoughts about Clay Holmes. Again, he's been a lot better than I thought. And he's still been like better still, or at least good enough. But man, it's crazy. And Bayonet, am I in fantasy land or am I spitting the facts? Right? Because I am not. People don't like to criticize Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo because they're homegrown guys, and everybody hates criticizing homegrown guys. But I'm gonna tell you how it is. I'm sorry. There's no denying that 2 guys who come from different organizations, in Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor, are the reason, or are part of the reason why they're still hanging on for dear life here, in my opinion. Because Pete Alonso has been bad lately. Nimmo has lost his hot streak. Lindor has been bad. Absolutely. He's been pretty bad as well. But let's be honest. How are they still hanging on to a spot in this playoffs? I don't know. But it's crazy. But let's get into the game before we call it a quits. Listen, they got to win a game today. I don't care how you do it. I know some people are complaining about the lineup and whatever. At this point, does it really matter? They weren't hitting over the last 3 days. Whatever Mendoza does is trying to get these guys to hit, right? He changed up what's going on. Vientos is batting third. Pete Alonso's batting fourth. Starlin Marte's DHing. Nimmo's in left field batting sixth. Alvarez, and to say something about Alvarez at bats is just, Alvarez is a shell of what I thought he would be. This guy is a single hitter. This is what he is. And let's not go back to the game where he swung at 3 pitches 45 feet off the zone against Duran in the 9th. Like that was the worst at bat I ever seen. Like it's like a 2-year-old, getting pitched to from an adult. Like it was so bad. And then you got Jose Siri, who's obviously back. He played yesterday. He's playing center field. And Luis Acuna playing second base. Listen, guys. I don't like Luis Acuna starting over Brett Beatty. I just don't. I'm sorry. I know it's Sanchez and the lefty. I get it. But Luis Acuna, and you know what? I hope he has a great night tonight. I hope he goes 3 for 4. 4 stolen bases. Like, I hope he does great today, right? It benefits the Mets. That's why I want him to do well. And Dolo, you've been saying that for a while, yet they still haven't relinquished the playoff spot. And I said this for a while. I am not talking about the Mets missing the playoffs as a topic of conversation until they're actually out of a playoff spot. Like, that's a fact. They still have held on to a playoff spot after all this time. We got 17 games to go. The day, and I'm going to be dead honest with you, the day they are officially out of a playoff spot and they're behind in the third wild card by a half a game, whatever, that's when we'll have that conversation. And Dolo, you can feel that way, but your comment is idiotic because they're in the playoffs right now. It's so annoying, the fact that people say that when they're still in the playoffs. We can criticize they're not playing well. They need to do better. Absolutely. Absolutely. 100% agree. But the fact saying they're not going to make the playoffs is a silly comment. Why? Because of the way they're playing. They've been playing like this for 3 months, yet only a week ago, they were 4 games up. And all they got to do, if they win today and a couple of teams lose, we might be 3 games up. We still might be controlling what we need to control. Here's the thing. The Mets control whatever outcome they have the rest of the season, right? It doesn't matter what any other team does behind them. If the Mets take care of their own business, they're in the playoffs. Yeah, Dolo, but you weren't saying that in May last year, right? Fire this guy, fire that guy. This guy doesn't deserve his contract, right? This team is better. Let's on paper, they're better. They went on a run last year that was insane. So, like, it is what it is. But the fact that we got 17 games to go and people are saying they're not making the playoffs, which is funny. And the D-backs are playing the Reds, right? If I'm not mistaken. And the Reds won yesterday, and the D-backs are winning today. Again. Yeah, but Dolo, heart doesn't mean talent, all right? Like, I talk about the 2015 team. What did that team have? That team had a bunch of nobodies on that team. Right? They're playing the Giants. All right, so the D-backs are beating the Giants. Great. So today, we're still 3 games up on the Giants because of the tiebreaker. They lose today, we're 3.5. We win today, we're 4 with 16 to play. Sure, Dakota, we had better pitching last year. I agree with that. But we didn't have a better lineup. We didn't. Like, I mean, Marte was our clutchest hitter in the postseason, along with who? Jose Iglesias. Well, technically not really Jose Iglesias in the playoffs, but it was Starlin Marte. It wasn't Pete Alonso. Like, he had that 1 home run and that big home run in Philly. That was basically against Philly. Basically, like who was really good? Lindor was really good, and Starlin Marte was like our best hitters in the postseason. Again, listen, we will have the conversation. Vientos, correct. So, again, when they're actually out of a playoff spot, we can have a full-blown conversation about it. But they're not. Because it still takes a lot to happen for the Mets to not make the playoffs. The Giants got to continue to win, and other teams as well, while the Mets continue to lose. Again, is it possible? I'll be the first one to tell you, sure. If see, This is the recency bias that too many Met fans have a problem with, right? They fall in love with Grimace and OMG and all that stuff. This team went on a run last year. The same way 2015 Mets went on a run. They weren't better than any of the teams in the postseason last year, yet they beat them. The same reason why, if the Mets make the playoffs, they have a better shot just as much as everybody else. Because of the fact that all you got to do is get hot at the right time. And again, the Mets are not playing well. I'll be the first one to tell you. But over 3 months of bad baseball, 76 games, 14 games under 500, they still have held onto a playoff spot. And my holy, they had fun last year, but ultimately, what did the fun get you? You didn't win. You didn't make your goal. The reason why people were so excited about last year was because it was unexpected. I'm so sick of unexpected years. They're stupid because they give you false hope for another season. And that is not even close to the same team that you put on paper. Right? Everybody wanted Jose Iglesias. Everybody wanted this guy and that guy back and blah, 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 and all that stuff. But that doesn't mean, and again, you could put the same team last year with this team. I'm talking about the players, not the performances, the players. You have a bad Sean Manaea, right? Luis Severino, terrible year. I guess everybody wanted him back. Right? Who was your right fielder? I mean, it was basically not many people that was any good, right? Jeff McNeil was terrible. Pete Alonso was having a terrible year. Yeah, Brandon Nimmo being Brandon Nimmo as always, just sucking for 4 months. And look, it was the Vientos Lindor show, right? That's what it was. This team has performed less to their expectations. That's the frustrating part. But of course, you're going to say right now on September 10th, when there's still 17 games to go and we all hope a playoffs, if the Mets don't get to the NLCS this year, then it's a failure. Not because of what the team did last year, but because there was expectations this year. It's very easy to perform when you have no expectation like last year, even though Jeff McNeil and Pete Alonso were terrible. But they have expectation now. They should be a lot better. There's a pretty good chance they're not going to hit their win total from last year. But they're still in a playoff spot. If we get in the playoffs with 86 wins, I don't give a shit. Because at the end of the day, you're going to play a team who record is better, obviously, but you start 0-0. And we know how that goes. Dolo, I remember those stuff, right? It was fun last year. But you know what? I'd rather have expectation going into a year than having the nonsense conversations we had at the beginning of last year and then being surprised by what happened. I don't like those years. Because those type of years give too much false hope to Met fans for other players that are not even on this team. You know, the reason why Sean Manaea is back is because the false hope he gave us last year. How's that working out for us this year? And Dolo, we do need a spark. I agree with you on that point. But it's September 10th. The spark you're going to get is by somebody stepping up on this team now. Like, hey, Clay Holmes, can you pitch your 7 innings? I mean, I don't think the pitching has been terrible in this series. The offense has struggled, right? But again, yesterday you were down 4-0 before you even sat down and drank a water. Like, it was crazy. It was nuts. So this team needs to find a way. It's just that simple. And again, the lineup is the lineup. I'm not a fan of Luis Acuna starting. You can tell me all you want about his speed. The guy can't hit. And again, I hope he goes 3 for 4 today, 3 RBIs, 4 stolen bases. I hope he has a night of his life. But Brett Beatty needs to be playing. I don't care if it's a lefty. Luis Acuna benefits his team as a pinch runner and defensive replacement. He is not worth starting because of his speed. He don't get on base enough to worry about his speed. Now, again, let's have a hell of a night, Luisano Acuna. Let's have a hell of a night. I'd be the first one to be excited about that. But come on. Let's get it done. Let's win a ball game today, guys. Let's win a ball game today. We've got about 15 minutes, 20 minutes until game time. We got Clay Holmes, Christopher Sanchez on the mound for the Mets and the Phillies, respectfully. The lineup is Lindor, Soto, Vientos, Alonso, Marte, Nimmo, Alvarez, Siri, and Acuna. Listen, there's nothing else to say except win a ball game. Yeah, Mauricio is still on this team, but he's a shadow. He keeps that bench warm. Again, this is why at the trade deadline, I said you got to get rid of a few of these guys because the log jam is just stupid. So, guys, with that said, enjoy the game. There's no post game today, unfortunately. Work's been crazy. I apologize for that. Hopefully, we're talking about a Mets win tomorrow in the pregame. Have a good night, guys. Enjoy the game. Let's go, Mets. And I'll see you tomorrow on the pregame show, guys. Have a great night.
Seven train rumble, headed to